In the palm of my hand is a square heavenly halberd, and under my body is a red rabbit and horse. Where in the world can I go? Reader group of this book. 276938907, Temple of War, the new book, The Ultimate Merchant of the Three Kingdoms, has been released, and we look forward to your support. Keywords of the novel. Reborn God of War LV Bu no pop-ups, Reborn God of War LV Bu TXT Complete Collection Download, Reborn God of War LV Bu Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. I am Lu Bu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. I am Lu Bu. Wen Yuan, what's wrong with General lately? It gives me a strange feeling. Could it be that the general felt anxious after the governor and the rebel Dongzhuo had their faces torn apart? Otherwise, he wouldn't have fallen off the horse. Silence, General has arrived. Wen Yuan, look, General is actually smiling. Chao Xing looked at Lu Bu with a surprised expression as he approached, and a hint of doubt flashed in his heart. Lu Bu's army has always been strict and demanding, especially since he was ordered to enter the capital with the governor. He had never laughed before, and Chao Xing's active personality also restrained a lot. General, Zhang Liao and Chao Xing quickly clasped their fists. Oh, what are you two muttering about here? Lu Bu, with a faint smile on his face, limped over, his steps although a bit difficult, still strong and powerful. General, have you recovered from your injury? Zhang Liao hurriedly asked when Chao Xing didn't react for a moment. A small injury, it's okay. Is my situation in the military okay after I was injured? You need to train your soldiers quickly, by the way, those injured soldiers must be taken care of. After explaining it to Lu Bu, he walked towards the direction of the training ground. Zhang Liao and Chao Xing exchanged a glance, and they could all see the confusion in each other's eyes. Although they had all known each other since pinching mud, LV Bu had always been arrogant and invincible in their eyes. There was a kind of domineering aura in him that was not my opponent in the world, and they were willing to follow LV Bu unexpectedly. In just a few days, LV Bu felt like a different person. Even the soldiers who used to be indifferent would personally inquire, and his words became more frequent. This is a big news. However, this transformation was good after all. Both of them thought that after multiple battles, Lu Bu's character had become more and more mature. Little did they know that although Lu Bu was still the same body in front of them, his soul came from over 1,000 years later. As a Chinese Special Forces soldier, facing the pursuit of a strong enemy, I had no choice but to jump off a cliff. I thought I would die, but by chance, I came to the most chaotic era of the Han Dynasty, and even became the first fierce General LV Bu. Excited, I was immediately occupied by helplessness. In terms of physical strength, one's own past life could never compare to it. However, thinking about the change in identity and the different times, guns and artillery were replaced with swords and halberds, and vehicles were replaced with warhorses. It was still somewhat unacceptable. Although the moves in LV Bu's memory were still there, they were somewhat strange in his eyes. After all, this was killing with such a long weapon. In order to quickly familiarize himself with the body, he tried to practice horsemanship, but unexpectedly, the general ran off the horse and made a big joke. From the eyes of the soldiers he saw along the way, Lu Bu saw reverence and fanaticism. Although the training of the soldiers seemed strange to him, it was so diligent that few people were lazy. Late at night, Lu Bu held the previously idle Spring and Autumn Annals in his hand, watching it with relish by candlelight. In his eyes, ancient books were too cumbersome, and reading these small stories for entertainment was still acceptable. As for the obscure and difficult to understand parts, he filtered them out directly. General, the governor has arrived outside the tent, the guards whispered as they entered. Governor, sir. Upon hearing this, LV Bu dared not neglect and hurriedly welcomed him out. Feng Xian, I heard from the sergeant that you were injured while riding a horse, is it okay? Ding Yuan asked with concern. It's nothing, some minor injuries, just take a rest. It's so late, adults haven't rested yet. LV still can't get used to the ancient people's polite tone of voice. Fortunately, LV himself is a general, so he naturally has no mistakes when others hear him. Ding Yuan is around 50 years old, and when he talks, he seems to have a smile on his face, giving people a sense of familiarity. Looking at Ding Yuan in front of him, LV also had mixed feelings. In his memory, this governor treated him very well, always focusing on cultivating himself and even training cavalry in the army. He was a practical second in command in the Bingzhou army. Well, there will be another fierce battle with Dong Jun tomorrow, so there's no need for Feng Xian to participate. Take good care of yourself and help my father defeat Dong's bandits, clear the emperor's side, and boost our Han dynasty. Speaking of this, Ding Yuan's face was filled with anger and a hint of hope. For the courtiers, the greatest honor could be greater than this. Sir, the number of Dong's army far exceeds that of our army, and we have Luoyang city as our defense. Our army is coming from Bingzhou, and the transportation of grain and grass is very inconvenient. If it goes on for a long time, there may be changes, so it's better to make a decision early. LV advised. Oh, what should I do with my humble opinion? Ding Yuan's eyes lit up. Previously, Lu Bu only knew how to charge and train soldiers on the battlefield, and he never thought about such a profound question. Sir, I believe our army should retreat and wait for the opportunity to engage in war with Dongzhuo. Lu Bu still couldn't shout out the words, adoptive father. No way, the Holy Emperor is now in the hands of Dong Thief, and the Emperor is in trouble. As a vassal, how can we stand idly by, not defeat Dong Thief, and swear not to give up? Although Lu Bu is right, once the Bingzhou army retreats, how will the people of the world view Ding Yuan? No, Lu Bu responded helplessly. Not to mention military affairs, I just listened to the words of the guards and was reading Spring and Autumn Annals first. Yes, I'm injured. I'm looking for something to do, and I can't understand many things, Lu Bu said with a smirk. Okay, it's great that Feng Xian has this intention. His personal martial courage is never comparable to strategizing, Ding Yuan said happily. After seeing off Ding Yuan, Lu Bu picked up the Spring and Autumn Annals from his desk with a complex expression. After reading the Three Kingdoms, he remembered that Ding Yuan was killed by himself, but now it was a modern soul that occupied Lu Bu's body. Thinking of Ding Yuan's kindness to him, he secretly said, "We must not let history repeat itself, and I will not be any three surname family slaves. Since we have entered this chaotic era, we must do something, not change the world, at least change our own destiny." General, there is a person outside the tent who claims to be an old friend of the general and wants to see him. Oh, old friend. Let him in, Lu Bu pondered for a moment. Feng Xian, don't be in trouble. He was dressed in a long robe as a scholar, with a thin figure and bright and lively eyes. However, the goat beard on his lips seemed a bit funny to LV. Are you? LV asked. Isn't it because I became a general and didn't know my old friends? Li Su smiled and said, I am your fellow villager Li Su, Li Weigong. We used to play together when we were children. Lu Bu's eyes flickered, and the person who should have come was still there. So it's Mr. Li, please, please. Please don't mock me, Lord Li. I'm just begging for a bowl of rice under the account of the Grand Tutor. Oh, since it's under the account of Dongzhuo's old thief, I should know that the two armies are at war. Are you coming to our camp at this time to spy on the military situation? Lu Bu's face changed slightly. The new book, The Ultimate Merchant of the Three Kingdoms, has been released, and we look forward to your support. Holding the mall system and dominating the world, who dares to block it? Beautiful women, good ministers and fierce generals, I have never lacked Qin Feng. Liu Bei said, Qin Feng, my son is trapped on the slope of Changban. I request support, the price is negotiable. Send the location over, this helicopter is rescuing. Cao Cao said, I beg Qin Feng with a lot of money to kill Lu Bu. As long as the price is sufficient, there is nothing that this seat cannot accomplish. Yuan Shao. Wu Chao caught fire, requesting support. If we take action, it's not easy to catch it. The chaotic three kingdoms were even more colorful due to the arrival of the Qin wind. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Li Su persuades LV Bu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Li Su persuades LV Bu. Li Su's expression paused for a moment, and he chuckled. Fengxian was joking, but I just came to reminisce with Fengxian. Is it because Fengxian wants to treat me as a meticulous worker? Is Wei Gong here to offer a good strategy for defeating the enemy? Lu Bu pursued. He, today we are together, only discussing personal matters, Li Su said awkwardly with a smile. Humph, little sample, fight with me. I know everything you bring, Lu Bu muttered to himself. In ancient times, when discussing emotions, it was usually the closest people from the same family or hometown. When two people got together, they naturally had a conversation. Fengxian's posture as a dragon and tiger will surely lead to some achievements in the future. Li Su was puzzled by LV Bu in front of him. A few years ago, he saw that LV Bu was not so calm. Could it be that Ding Yuan taught him well? I can't compare to Wei Gong, Lu Bu said humbly. Seeing no one around, Li Su whispered, to be honest with Fengxian, I came here at the request of the Grand Tutor. The Grand Tutor hopes day and night that Fengxian can turn his back on the dark and turn to the light. If Fengxian joins the Grand Tutor, he will definitely be highly valued. A little golden pearl is the wish of the Grand Preceptor. As long as Fengxian can submit to the Grand Preceptor, high officials and generous salaries are naturally not a problem. Recently, the Grand Preceptor obtained a BMW named Red Rabbit, which is a fine horse that travels thousands of miles every day. As long as Fengxian agrees, it will be given along with it. Oh, I don't know where this horse is now. Lu Bu glanced at the 2 boxes of gold beads brought up by Li Su's attendants. This horse is currently in the Taisher camp, and it is inconvenient at night. As long as you agree to surrender to the Taisher first, the Red Rabbit horse will definitely be sent tomorrow, Li Su said slowly, staring into Lu Bu's eyes. Don't talk about this anymore. If it weren't for the fact that we are fellow villagers, we would definitely have taken you down and handed you over to the governor for disposal. Lu Bu said seriously, feeling slightly disappointed in his heart. After all, the Red Rabbit horse is the #1 BMW in the Three Kingdoms. To be the first, good birds choose trees to inhabit. Ding Yuan cannot last long, think twice. Li Su suddenly became anxious. Before coming, he had already made a military order, and if he returned without success, he would inevitably be punished. If Wei Gong can't stay with Dongzhuo's old thief, he can come to Bingzhou. LV Bu turned around and didn't look at Li Su. Alas, I have finished my words. Li Su sighed and turned to leave, but Lu Bu's words of persuasion warmed his heart. It's a pity that I didn't see the Red Rabbit horse. Dongzhuo is not a fool, he knows how to deliver in batches. LV Bu secretly felt regretful. Grand Preceptor, Lu Bu is ignorant and unwilling to submit to the Grand Preceptor. He even said that he will. In the future, said Li Su with a look of shame at the Grand Preceptor's mansion. Humph, when our Grand Preceptor breaks through the Bingzhou army, we will definitely dismember Lu Bu and his men to relieve my hatred. Dongzhuo cursed loudly, you are also a fool. Not only did you not persuade Lu Bu to surrender, but you also lost 2 boxes of gold beads. What use do you have? If it weren't for Wen Yu's persuasion, I'm afraid the Red Rabbit and horse would have been lost. The Grand Tutor spared his life. Although his visit to the Bingzhou army was unsuccessful, he found that LV Bu was injured and his movements were quite inconvenient. Li Su quickly shared his discovery. Is LV Bu injured? Dongzhuo laughed and said, okay, this is a heaven-sent opportunity. Without LV Bu, I see how Ding Yuan's children can defeat the children under my command. Taisher, the soldiers and horses of Bingzhou are elite, and the number of troops is not inferior to ours. We should be cautious and cautious, advised Li Ru. Without Lu Bu, the Bingzhou army is not a concern. Let's see how our grand tutor will kill the enemy tomorrow, Dong Zhuo said disdainfully. The next day, Dong Zhuo mobilized 20,000 elite soldiers and personally went out to supervise the battle. The fluttering flags, the sound of war drums, the sound of swords and spears like a forest, the resounding and powerful drums, and the distinctive armor of the soldiers, make people unable to resist the excitement. In the rear of the army, Lv Bu truly experienced the scene of ancient war. Compared to this, movies in later generations are like children playing house. In the era of cold weapons, it was basically impossible to see the enemy's war, and there could be no magnificent scene in front of him. I am General Huaxiong of the Western Liang Army. Who dares to fight me? Huaxiong stood in front of the two armies with a long sword and shouted loudly. Who dares to go forward and fight? Ding Yuan turned around and glanced at the generals behind him, but felt a bit frustrated. He didn't expect someone to come and call out when Lu Bugong was injured. Fighting generals before battle can greatly boost the morale of the army. As the saying goes, generals are the courage of soldiers. If generals are all hesitant, how can they expect their soldiers to use their lives? For a long time, seeing no one to fight, Zhang Liao rode his horse and raised his gun. I humbly went and beheaded Huaxiong. Okay, beat the drums to cheer. Ding Yuan was overjoyed. At the beginning of the battle, Zhang Liao's heart sank. Huaxiong's strength was much greater than his own, and his arms were slightly tingling. He could only rely on the exquisite moves to fight against Huaxiong. Although Zhang Liao was also a famous general, there was still a big gap compared to Huaxiong during his peak period. Guns and knives flew back and forth, dust flying in the air. Gradually, Zhang Liao felt his strength was running low, while Huaxiong was getting stronger and had a great momentum to kill him in one fell swoop. At this time, Zhang Liao was young and had a certain gap in combat experience and strength compared to Huaxiong. Bring your life, Huaxiong shouted and used all his strength to chop towards Zhang Liao. Gritting his teeth and forcefully taking Huaxiong's move, Zhang Liao's tiger mouth cracked, and his arms were so sore that he couldn't exert any strength. He fell off his horse and headed towards his formation. Where to escape? Huaxiong chased relentlessly, taking advantage of Lu Bu's absence from the battle and thinking about his might. How could he easily let Zhang Liao go? Upon seeing this, Ding Yuan hurriedly ordered his subordinates to come out and rescue Zhang Liao. His gaze towards Huaxiong showed a look of fear. Dong Zhuo saw that Huaxiong had won and immediately ordered the entire army to charge. The thunderous iron cavalry came from all over, with dust flying in the sky. Huaxiong led the way and rushed into the Bingzhou army. Wherever he passed, no one could stop him, and the cavalry behind him followed closely, like a sharp knife piercing into the Bingzhou army. The Xiliang army, which accompanied Dong Zhuo to the capital, was very elite. The Bingzhou army, which had been killed, retreated step by step. Ding Yuan saw the enemy's momentum and constantly mobilized troops and generals in the formation. Capture Ding Yuan alive. Huaxiong shouted loudly, took a good look at the flag of Ding Yuan's army, and led his cavalry to kill him. Dong Zhuo has been on the battlefield for a long time. He first used cavalry to defeat the front army of the Bingzhou army. Once the cavalry penetrated the enemy's formation, victory was firmly in his hands. Lu Bu, who was behind the battle line, was also powerless. This kind of scene was obviously not something that one person could control. The battlefield charge tested the combat effectiveness of the soldiers. Although pre-war generals could stimulate the morale of the soldiers to a certain extent, it cannot be said that one general could defeat thousands of soldiers. The Bingzhou army is also worthy of being an elite force, gradually gaining a foothold under the charge of cavalry. However, with Li Ru's advice in Dong Zhuo's army, the Western Liang army gradually gained the upper hand. Trapped in camp. Gao Shun drew his sword and shouted loudly. Here! 800 brave soldiers in battle responded in unison. Kill! Gao Shun stood in the formation, pointing his sword at Hua Xiong. As soon as they met, Hua Xiong felt like he had encountered an opponent. Although the soldiers he was fighting against were ordinary soldiers, their cooperation was very tacit. Even if he could kill a few, he would definitely get hurt. Kill! Hua Xiong waved his long sword towards the trapped camp and shouted loudly when he saw that he couldn't do anything. The new book, The Ultimate Merchant of the Three Kingdoms, is currently being serialized, seeking various forms of support. Holding the mall system and dominating the world, who dares to block it? Beautiful women, good ministers and fierce generals, I have never lacked Qin Feng. Liu Bei said, Qin Feng, my son is trapped on the slope of Changban. I request support, the price is negotiable. Send the location over, this helicopter is rescuing. Cao Cao said, I beg Qin Feng with a lot of money to kill Lu Bu. As long as the price is sufficient, there is nothing that this seat cannot accomplish. Yuan Xiao. Wu Chao caught fire, requesting support. If we take action, it's not easy to catch it. The chaotic Three Kingdoms were even more colorful due to the arrival of the Qin wind. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Ding Yuan still dies. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Ding Yuan still dies. With the obstruction of the trapped camp, the Bingzhou army stopped its defeat. Seeing this, Hua Xiong was secretly anxious and constantly commanded his soldiers to charge forward, attempting to disrupt the formation of the trapped camp. Seeing that the trapped camp was like a divine needle in the sea, firmly nailed to the front of the Bingzhou army, preventing the Xiliang army from advancing any further, Lv Bu nodded slightly with a look of appreciation in his eyes. The trapped camp deserved the name of being trapped and still had an advantage in the face of cavalry. Dong Zhuo from the rear of the Xiliang army saw that the Bingzhou army had stabilized its position, and their casualties began to increase. He quickly ordered the surrender of troops. The Bingzhou army suffered a considerable loss in this battle. Taisher, now that the Bingzhou army has been newly defeated, the defense will inevitably become lax. Why not order people to camp at night, and they will definitely be able to kill Ding Yuan's children. Li Ru took the opportunity to offer advice. Well, not bad, not bad. The injury to Lv Bu was a godsend opportunity, and it happened to solve the Bingzhou army together. Dong Zhuo stroked his beard and laughed. Grand Tutor, I humbly wish to lead 5,000 men and horses to behead the Dingyuan dog head. Hua Xiong approached and begged for battle. Alright, Hua Xiong, you lead 5,000 troops to launch a surprise attack on the Bingzhou army at 3 o'clock. Guo Si and Li Qian lead 5,000 troops to cover up, while Niu Fu leads 5,000 troops to strategize. Taisha Ruosheng personally pays tribute to you in front of the Holy Emperor. No, I will dedicate the head of Ding Yuaner to the Grand Tutor. Hua Xiong was overjoyed upon hearing this, and his military achievements were the quickest way for generals to elevate their status. At night, Lv Buten sat in the camp summarizing the gains and losses of today's battle. As a special forces soldier, although he had experienced small-scale battles, he still had some vision. Through the daytime battles, he could see some drawbacks of ancient warfare. It was obvious that generals were unable to command their soldiers. If the Bingzhou army were like trapped in a camp and commanded by their arms, the Western Liang army would definitely not have any advantage in today's battles. Suddenly, Lu Bu felt an inexplicable palpitations, and his experience of wandering on the brink of life and death all year round told him that something bad had happened. The sound of dong 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 sounded like thunder from far to near, and Lv Bu quickly picked up his painted halberd and walked outward. On a pitch-black night, without a trace of his fingers, Hua Xiong shouted and took the lead in infiltrating the Bingzhou army. He did not tremble even when encountering the enemy, but kept setting fire in the camp. Enemy attacking camp. The mournful shout made the entire camp appear somewhat panicked, and many soldiers were nowhere to be seen as soon as they left the tent. The soldiers did not know the general, and the Bingzhou army was in chaos. Guosi and Li Xian led 5,000 soldiers and horses to fight out from the left side of the camp. For a while, the Bingzhou army did not know how many enemies there were. In a panic, the enemy and we were indistinguishable, and even swords and soldiers clashed with each other. "General, hurry up and let the Western Liang army rob the camp." Zhang Liao, disheveled, rode his horse and rushed over. "Where is the wolf cavalry? Follow me to save the governor." Lu Bu stiffly climbed onto the warhorse, waved his painted halberd forward, and led his men towards the position of the central army. Anyway, Ding Yuan is still a good person. With him in the Bingzhou army, he can be safe and sound. If something happens to him, it will be troublesome. Lu Bu doesn't want to start living in exile before he adapts to this era. Ding Yuan is dead, those who surrender will not be killed. Hua Xiong shouted in the center of the battlefield with a majestic voice. The Bingzhou army saw that Ding Yuan had died in the hands of Hua Xiong, and felt a sense of fear. Even the commander had died, so what was the point of continuing to fight? Upon seeing the head of Ding Yuan on the tip of Hua Xiong's sword, Lu Bu felt a chill in his heart. Could it be that crossing the line could not change Ding Yuan's fate? Unexpectedly, Ding Yuan did not die in his own hands, but was killed by Hua Xiong's attack. "Hua Xiong child, take your life." LV Bu greeted Zhang Liao and shouted, and the two of them killed Hua Xiong together. Seeing Lu Bu and Zhang Liao come to kill, Hua Xiong's heart trembled. He had seen Lu Bu's martial arts skills outside the city of Luoyang that day. He fought alone against 3 generals of the Western Liang army, and fought 3 consecutive battles, including him. Zhang Liao's martial arts skills were also not weak. When these two joined forces, he wondered how they could be a match. Kill. Hua Xiong gritted his teeth and rushed forward, unable to retreat at this moment. Although Lu Bu's equestrian skills were not good, he still had the instinct to fight. Coupled with his immense strength, he only had the ability to parry Hua Xiong. Zhang Liao attacked from the side, causing Hua Xiong to be extremely anxious. The appearance of LV Bu undoubtedly helped the panicked Bingzhou army find the backbone. Without Ding Yuan, they still had the invincible General LV. Lu Bu, shameless child. Seeing the Bingzhou army standing firm under the leadership of various generals and fighting against their own army, Hua Xiong cursed loudly and threw Ding Yuan's head at Lu Bu. He took the opportunity to drop his horse and return to the army, where he met with Guosi's troops to cover up for a while. Seeing Lu Bu personally leading cavalry and trapping the camp, he had to lead his troops back to Luoyang. With the help of Zhang Liao, Gao Shun, and others, LV Bu gathered the remaining soldiers and retreated to camp near the valley city. Looking at the pitch-black camp and dense corpses burned by the fire, even Lu Bu, who had undergone brutal training, felt a tingling scalp. He was still a living soldier before, but in the blink of an eye, he turned into a cold corpse. "General, in this battle, our army has lost more than 3,000 soldiers and horses, and more than 6,000 wounded." Zhang Liao clasped his fists and said. "Well, I got it." Lu Bu nodded, feeling very low. He didn't expect so many soldiers to be lost in World War I. After Ding Yuan's death, LV Bu was elected by the generals such as Zhang Liao and Gao Shun as the leader of the Bingzhou army, leading the Bingzhou army. No one opposed Lu Bu's reputation in the Bingzhou army. Dealing with the affairs of the Bingzhou army, LV Bu finally understood how busy Ding Yuan was on a regular basis. Firstly, the issue of grain and forage needed to be solved. Fortunately, the surrounding counties of Luoyang were prosperous and could alleviate the temporary crisis. The grain and forage of Bingzhou would also arrive soon. However, Ding Yuan's death dealt a great blow to the morale of the soldiers in Bingzhou, revealing a sense of desolation in the camp. The old thief Ding Yuan has died, and I am worried. Tomorrow morning, when we discuss the matter of deposing the emperor, I will see who dares to oppose me. Dong Zhuo laughed proudly at the Grand Tutor's mansion. Grand Tutor, even though Ding Yuan died, LV Bu is still spying on Luo Yang near the Valley City, which is a hidden danger, Li Ru whispered. Lu Bushour, the bravery of a man is not a concern. Gu Cheng is also a small city. As soon as our Western Yang army arrives, Lu Bushour will definitely be defeated by our army. Dong Zhuo said nonchalantly, as Ding Yuan, such a prominent figure, died in his hands, let alone Lu Bu, who was just a military general. The Grand Tutor is incredibly brave and unstoppable, but with the Bingzhou army outside the city, it's like a thorn in the throat. Confucianism has a plan to keep the Bingzhou army at bay, Li Rodeo said. Oh, what strategies does one you have? Hurry up and tell me. Dong Zhuo was overjoyed when he heard this. Now Li Ru is his biggest reliance. Although there are many capable people in the court, he is not willing to sacrifice his life for him, especially literati who look down on him both openly and secretly. Otherwise, his actions would not have caused a great threat to Luo Yang. Ding Yuan is already dead, so the Grand Tutor only needs to submit a memorial to the party governor Zhang Yang as the governor of Bingzhou and LV Bu as the governor of Jiuyuan. This can make LV Bu worried about Bingzhou and unable to consider both ends, and he will definitely withdraw his troops in the near future. I recommend a friend's book, Super Beast Control System of the Three Kingdoms, which is well written, with a novel theme and interesting content. I suggest everyone take a look. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Army Reorganization. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Army Reorganization, when Yu's plan is very clever. Dong Zhuo pondered for a moment and understood the powerful relationship between them. The governor of Bingzhou had more power than the governor of Bingzhou, leading the military and political affairs of one state. Even Dong Zhuo was somewhat jealous of Zhang, who had taken the great fortune. If LV Bu found out that the governor of Bingzhou had become Zhang, he would not have given up easily. Lu Bu, the young child, is ignorant and seeks to oppose my Grand Tutor. With the help of my literary talent, why worry about the world not being able to be settled? Dong Zhuo said proudly. The achievements of the Grand Tutor are unparalleled. If the emperor is deposed and a new ruler is established, it will surely intimidate all officials and make the world's heroes submit. Li Ru agreed. Okay, we'll have a banquet with all the courtiers tomorrow and discuss the matter of deposing the emperor. Dong Zhuo laughed and chose another emperor, which was the highest manifestation of the power of the Han dynasty's courtiers, such as General Huguang, who had a momentary tilt of power. The next day, Dong Zhuo submitted a memorial recommending the Shandong prefect as the governor of Bingzhou, in charge of military and political affairs in Bingzhou. At the same time, he appointed LV Bu as the prefect of Jiuyuan and immediately led troops back to Jiuyuan. Lu Bian looked trembling at Dong Zhuo, who was arrogantly giving orders, and turned to the court ministers for help. As a young man, he was already afraid of Dong Zhuo's barbaric behavior. After a recent period of bloody cleaning by Dong Zhuo, no one in the court dared to argue with him face to face, and could only agree. Seeing the reaction of the monarchs and ministers in the court, Dong Zhuo laughed heartily. After several rounds of fighting, Ding Yuan brought in 40,000 soldiers from Bingzhou, leaving only over 18,000 soldiers. After careful consideration, LV Bu decided to launch a plan of elite troops and launch a night attack on the same day. If his own troops had not disrupted their positions, Huaxiong would not have easily succeeded. In short, the training of the soldiers was insufficient, and in the face of a surprise attack, the generals of each department could not effectively organize their troops to resist. The most scarce thing now is time. If given a year, he is confident that he can train an elite team. Wearing a plain robe, LV Bu knelt at the head of the tent. Although he wanted to lead his army back to Bingzhou, Ding Yuan's revenge was not avenged. Returning to the army at this time would surely make his generals feel cold, and Ding Yuan treated him well, making it difficult for him to pass this hurdle. Governor Ding unfortunately passed away and was elected as the leader of the military by the lower authorities, feeling deeply responsible. The court appointed me as the prefect of Jiuyuan and returned to Jiuyuan today, appointing Zhang Yang as the governor of Bingzhou to lead the military and political affairs of Bingzhou. After finishing speaking, Lu Bu looked around and saw everyone discussing, and his words changed. However, currently I think there are three things that are most important. The general stopped discussing and turned his gaze to Lu Bu. Firstly, seek revenge for Governor Ding. Secondly, stabilize Bingzhou. Thirdly, train and prepare for battle. Seeing that Lu Bu prioritized avenging Ding Yuan, many generals were relieved. Ding Yuan was usually kind to others and loved by generals, and many people did not take Zhang Yang seriously. Although he is now the governor of Bingzhou, when the army returns to Bingzhou, it is not up to anyone with a big fist to decide. Noah, the generals said in unison. After several major battles, the Bingzhou army suffered heavy casualties. Now, I will divide the Bingzhou army into 4 parts and 3 cavalry. Zhang Liao will lead 1,000 wolf cavalry, and the lost troops will be selected first from the army. Noah, Zhang Liao was overjoyed. The wolf cavalry was the first cavalry formed by Lvbu, with a very strong combat power and a steady advantage in the battle with the cavalry of the Western Liang army. Chao Xing established the Tiger Guard as the commander, with a force of 1,000 cavalry responsible for safeguarding the safety of the Central Army. The troops and horses were selected from the soldiers' ranks first, and more people were sent to inquire about the surrounding areas of Luoyang and the army. Any news or disturbance should be reported in a timely manner. No, Chao Xing said. Cheng Lian established the Brave Cavalry Battalion as the commander of the Brave Cavalry, with a force of 1,000 cavalry soldiers who could be selected from among the soldiers first. No, Cheng Lian grinned and responded with a clasped fist. Gao Shun continues to lead the trapped camp, with his 800 troops remaining unchanged. The selection of necessary weapons and soldiers cannot be neglected. No. Hao Meng, Wei Su, Song Xian, and Ho Qing each led 2,000 infantry and selected the elite soldiers for training. No, the 4 of them said in unison. Okay, I hope you can lead your soldiers to train and achieve results. After half a month, I will assess each department and replace any unqualified generals. Lu Bu said. Upon hearing this, everyone's hearts were shaken. The general who was just appointed could be said to be an absolute confidant of Lu Bu, and his position in the army was not low, so no one opposed him just now. Previously, Ding Yuan also focused on cultivating Lvbu, as Zhang Liao, Gao Shun, and others held important positions in the military. Therefore, after Ding Yuan's death, Lvbu was in command, and there were no other voices in the Bingzhou army. Wen Yuan, lead 1,000 wolf cavalry and the remaining troops back to Bingzhou. After everyone left, Lvbu said to Zhang Liao. General, I am willing to follow the general to kill the enemy and seek revenge for the governor. Zhang Liao clenched his fists. Wen Yuan, Bingzhou is the foundation of our army. If Bingzhou is unstable, the army's morale will be unstable. We hope that after you return to Bingzhou, you can stabilize Jiuyuan as soon as possible, so that the enemy does not cut off our army's rear line. At the same time, we urge Zhang Yang to transport food and grass. Zhang Yang has just taken control of Bingzhou, so he will definitely not be negligent. Lvbu patted Zhang Liao's shoulder and said earnestly, the court has appointed Zhang Yang, the prefect of the Shandong party, as the governor of Bingzhou. You cannot have any conflict with him when you return this time. I will make a decision after I return to Bingzhou. No, I will definitely not disappoint the general's trust in my humble position, said Lu Bu. Zhang Liao instantly felt the importance of responsibility and became more vigilant about Zhang Yang in his heart. In the past, when Ding Yuan was present, Zhang Yang did not dare to make any overstepping moves. Now that Ding Yuan has died, the court has appointed him as the governor of Bingzhou, which has invisibly added many changes. However, the Wolf Cavalry is the most elite team of the Bingzhou army, and his chances of winning are still very high. When Yuan, don't joke. We are brothers, and as long as you put your heart into it, we can definitely ensure the stability of Bingzhou. The Shandong prefect Zhang Yang has a good personal relationship with me, and I believe we won't have any difficulties in raising food and supplies with you. Lu Bu said sternly, after arriving in Zhouyuan, we will raise more war horses and train knights. When I return, I will need 3,000 elite cavalry. A humble position will not disappoint the general's expectations. Zhang Liao's eyes turned red, and after many years, Lu Bu once again mentioned the word brother. Go back and tidy up. I hope to return to Bingzhou one day. With you in Zhouyuan, I can rest assured here. Zhang Liao clenched his fists and left. LV Bu's trust stirred his mood, and he secretly swore to train an elite cavalry to provide more horses for the Bingzhou army. The Bingzhou army defended the border of the Great Han Dynasty, and the soldiers brought by Ding Yuan were all among the elite. After such a bold rectification by LV Bu, the Bingzhou army burst into vitality, and the entire army was determined to seek revenge for Ding Yuan. General, the scouts in the city have come to report that Dong Zhuo intends to abolish the current emperor and enthrone Lu Xia as the new emperor. Chao Xing received the news and reported it to Lu Bu as soon as possible. After reading it, remember to bookmark it. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Stirrups. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Stirrups. Okay, Dong Zhuo's old thief's life is not long, Lu Bu laughed. General, why did you say this? Chao Xing asked with suspicion. Humph, Dong Zhuo's reverse actions in Luoyang City have already caused anger and resentment among the people. Initially, he wanted to abolish the current emperor, but Governor Ding intervened and did not want to be harmed by him. However, he underestimated the heroes of the world. With just a proclamation, Dong Zhuo would become the target of the feudal lord's campaign. With his own strength, there is no reason for victory. Lu Bu naturally knew about this history and said casually. General is wise, Chao Xing agreed. Stop flattering and train well. Don't think that being the leader of the Tiger Guard can make you special. If the Tiger Guard is not qualified, you can feed them horses. Don't worry, General. I still have the ability to humble myself, Chao Xing chuckled. Among the generals, he was the only one who dared to do so in front of Lu Bu. After recent observation, he found that Lu Bu's temper had improved a lot, and he had started to joke more. Get lost, Lu Bu pretended to be angry. I'll go now, Chao Xing said with a playful smile. Lu Bu felt a warmth in his heart, as if he had found the feeling of his past life in the military. In contrast, in the Bingzhou army, there was more obedience and less camaraderie. It seems that there will be time to change in the future, so that soldiers in the army can find a sense of belonging, which is more conducive to improving combat effectiveness. The generals in each department were busy training, and Lu Bu couldn't be idle. In order to adapt to the war horses more quickly, he had fallen off his horse for several days, causing many jokes in front of the generals in the army. After some observation, LV Bu found that the war horses of the Han dynasty were indeed missing some things. No wonder they always fell off the horses. The stirrups were an indispensable part of war horses. With them, it became easy to get on and off the horses, and making various movements on them would not worry about falling off. So LV Bu ordered his men to secretly create stirrups, ensuring smooth movement on the warhorse. It must be said that LV Bu's body was truly the top general of the three kingdoms. Without strength, the halberd technique in his memory was also a shocking move. As long as he skillfully used it, anyone in the world who was an enemy needed to strengthen his riding skills. Subsequently, Lu Bu equipped all his warhorses with stirrups. With this epoch-making treasure, the combat effectiveness of cavalry doubled. Originally, cavalry could only perform simple movements on horseback. After having stirrups, ordinary cavalry can perform some difficult movements. With the equestrian skills of ordinary generals, it is definitely a crushing presence on the battlefield. Riding on horses with stirrups, Lu Bu also feels very comfortable, without constantly worrying about falling off the horses. After discovering the use of stirrups, the cavalry was also very excited and thought to the next time they encountered the Western Liang army, let them see what horsemanship was. It was night, and Lu Bu led Chao Xing's 1,000 tiger guards to quietly start the night drill. The rumbling sound of horse hooves echoed through the fields, and after several battles, the Bingzhou army could not help but understand that cavalry had arrived. Enemy attack. The patrolling soldiers shouted and kept tapping the gong in their hands. Many soldiers had just fallen asleep when the noisy sound pulled them back from their dreams. They hurriedly put on their clothes, but in panic, they forgot where the weapons were placed. Looking at the panicked camp and blindly commanding generals, and even some soldiers pointing their swords and guns at their own troops, Lu Bu frowned. Ignite. Lu Bu said coldly. Under the light of the fire, the panicked soldiers saw their own troops and breathed a sigh of relief. Qing Lian's face turned pale as he looked at his disheveled subordinates and walked towards Lu Bu. Look at what you all look like, still thinking of avenging the governor like this. If it's really the Western Liang army that killed you, how many of you can survive? Lu Bu said in a sharp voice inside the camp, did you forget the lesson you taught that night? General Qing Lian, this is how you train your soldiers on a regular basis. When the enemy attacks, you will fight bare-handed. General, I apologize for my inadequate training in my humble position. Please punish me, General. Qing Lian's face turned red. Let's forget about the first time. If I see another soldier who hasn't brought a weapon, you can personally go and get it for him. If anyone hasn't dressed properly, you can help him put it on. No, Qing Lian arched his hand, thinking about how to train those subordinates after returning. The other generals in the tent were taken aback. It seemed that they needed to strengthen their nighttime training in the future, otherwise they would have been humiliated and might even lose their position. In the future, when resting at night, generals should be clear about the positions of their subordinates. If there are any changes, they should be able to organize troops and horses in a timely manner. Soldiers patrolling at night should be vigilant and use commands. If I find that you are facing enemy raids like this again, roll to the grass field and feed your horses. After Lu Bu personally led the army to sneak into the camp, the soldiers and horses of each department were much more cautious when resting at night. Faced with the subsequent 2 sneak camps, they were able to organize resistance in an orderly manner. Although they were still a bit panicked, they were not so at a loss. What soldiers are most afraid of is not knowing how many enemies are coming, and many soldiers cannot see at night. They will unconsciously develop fear psychologically, which is also a common problem among ancient soldiers. Due to long-term malnutrition, many soldiers cannot see at night. These fears are the root cause of the chaos in the army, and once the soldiers of the Bingzhou army can overcome this, they will have a significant advantage on the battlefield. Brothers, to kill enemies, one also needs to have strong skills. Usually, I ask you to train hard so that you have the ability to save your life and kill on the battlefield. Now, the assessment begins. Lu Bu, dressed in military uniform, stood on the high platform and said loudly, "Brother." Upon hearing such a friendly title, the generals and soldiers below felt a warm heart. There was nothing unsatisfied about having such a general who treated himself as a brother. Watching the sparse steps of the infantry, Lu Bu shook his head slightly. Such a team can be said to have no discipline at all, and it is not certain whether the orders on the battlefield can be effectively implemented, while the formation of cavalry is scattered throughout the mountains and fields. The assessment of soldiers is also a test of their basic strength and speed. After all, each unit is not trapped in a camp, and under the command of Gao Shun, they can be guided like an arm. Looking at the chaotic formation, LV did not change much and lost the patience to continue watching. All the generals are out, Lu Bu said in a low and composed voice. Now General, I will teach you how to walk and turn for soldiers. After you go down, I will teach the soldiers below to practice more in their daily lives. Lu Bu showed some simple movements in front of the soldiers of the Bingzhou army, such as what it means to walk in unison and how to turn. The new book, Rebirth of Zhao Yun. Battle for the World, has been released, and we hope everyone can support us. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. 18 Root Marquises Conquering Directors. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. 18 Root Marquises Conquering Directors. For a month in a row, the Xiliang army became the target of training for the Bingzhou army, constantly going to the city to fight. What impressed the Xiliang army in the city was the slogans shouted by the Bingzhou army, such as, "Protect our country, fight to the end." The shouting became louder and louder, and the army became more and more orderly in the eyes of Dong Zhuo and others. The Bingzhou army was just here to show off and didn't take it seriously. It wasn't that Dong Zhuo didn't want to send someone to teach Lu Bu a lesson, but rather that the aristocratic families in the city were eager to move forward. The strength of these aristocratic families united should not be underestimated, and he could only swallow this breath. During this period, LV also received several letters sent by officials in the city. After reading these letters, LV burned them directly. The officials in the court, knowing that there was a huge disparity in strength between the two sides, even instructed him to attack Luoyang. They made it clear that they were treating him as a fool, talking nonsense about supporting the country and cooperating internally and externally. Ding Yuan was deceived by those people, but was eventually killed by Dong Zhuo. Dong Zhuo followed Li Ru's advice and, in order to establish prestige and win people's hearts in the court, promoted party members extensively, and established relationships with aristocratic families. Even Yuan Shao, who had fled from the capital against him, was appointed as the governor of Bohai. However, for Dong Zhuo's kindness, Yuan Shao clearly did not accept it. He recruited troops and horses in the Bohai Sea, and due to the reputation of the Yuan family, it quickly attracted many literati and generals to join him. Upon receiving the news that the Western Liang army had recently arrived in Luoyang, LV quickly led his army to retreat and station outside the Sisui Pass. While training, he waited for the opportunity for the feudal lords to attack Dong Zhuo. The emperor had been replaced by Dong Zhuo, and the time for the feudal lords to attack Dong should have come. Without Lu Bu's Dong Zhuo, who would be sent to guard Hulao Pass and resist the allied forces. How would they fight against the allied forces? At this time, the surrounding area of Luoyang was not peaceful, and there were occasional bandits causing chaos. The Bingzhou army was responsible for sending troops to suppress the bandits, and it had a good reputation in the surrounding area. Dong Zhuo in Luoyang city has always wanted to recruit LV, but LV never fooled him, and LV did not play cards according to common sense. It can be said that the governor of Bingzhou has become more prominent. LV should hurry back to Bingzhou to seize power, which puzzled Dong Zhuo very much. In September, when Dong Zhuo saw that things were almost ready, the Western Liang army entered the city, which further boosted his confidence. Therefore, he ordered his courtiers to go to court at the Jiada Hall. Dong Zhuo drew his sword and stood at the head of the courtiers, coldly shouting, "Today, I am weak and not enough to rule the world. We must establish a new ruler in order to bring prosperity to our Han dynasty." Li Ru immediately took out the prepared documents and said, "Emperor Shaoling, abandon your subjects early. I hereby depose the emperor as the king of Hongnong, and the empress dowager returns to politics. Please appoint Prince Chenlu as the emperor, in accordance with heaven and earth, to appease the hopes of all living beings." Dong Zhuo saw that the courtiers were silent, and ordered his attendants to help Lu Bian down the hall and remove his seal. Lu Bian's tears flowed uncontrollably. Shangshu Dingguan cursed loudly, Dongzhuo, the old thief, is not a human son. Everyone should be punished for his actions. If he dares to bully the emperor now, I will splash his neck with blood. Dongzhuo was furious when he saw this and ordered his left and right officials to behead him. No one dared to respond. Under Dongzhuo's leadership, he paid respects to Lu Xie, who had just been helped to the throne. Dongzhuo recommended himself as the prime minister, praising and worshipping him without a name, and entering the court without following him. His sword and shoes were on the court, and his prestige was unmatched. In order to prevent those with intentions in the court from making any more official documents, Dongzhuo secretly ordered Li Ru to kill Liu Bian. The once stormy Han was mercilessly slapped in the face by Dongzhuo. At this time, Cao Cao, who had conspired with Wang Yun to assassinate Dongzhuo but failed, fled back to Qiao County and recruited troops and horses. The governor of Dongjun, Xiao Mao, falsely claimed that the three princes of the capital had sent a letter to various prefectures, stating Dongzhuo's wrongdoing. People and horses from all walks of life responded, and Lv Bu outside the Sisui Pass also received a proclamation to suppress Dongzhuo. The 18 feudal lords were Yuan Shu, the first general of Nanyang, Han Fu, the second governor of Jizhou, Kong Rong, the third governor of Yuzhou, Lu Dai, the fourth governor of Yenzhou, Wang Quan, the fifth governor of Hanoi, Zhang Miao, the sixth governor of Chenlu, Qiao Mao, the seventh governor of Dongjun, Yuan Yi, the eighth governor of Shanyang, Bao Xian, the ninth governor of Jibei, Kong Rong, the 10th governor of Beihai, Zhang Chao, the 11th governor of Guangling, and Tao Qian, the 12th governor of Shuzhou. The 13th route is led by Ma Teng, the 14th route is led by Gongsun Zan, the 14th route is led by Beiping, the 15th route is led by Sun Jian, the 15th route is led by Changsha, the 16th route is led by Cao Cao, the 16th route is led by Dianjuan Colonel, the 17th route is led by Yuan Shao, the 17th route is led by Bohai, and the 18th route is led by Lv Bu. The 18th route is led by Jiuyuan. The 18 feudal lords and horses gathered together, truly blocking the sky and sun. Various flags fluttered in the wind, and Lv Bu led the troops of Bingzhou with neat steps and loud slogans, attracting a lot of attention. Other feudal lords and horses along the way solemnly gave way. Anyway, the Bingzhou army was always fighting against Dongzhuo's army, worthy of their admiration. When the news of the 18 feudal lords gathering in Xuanzhou and forming an alliance to attack Dongzhuo reached Luoyang, Dongzhuo became panicked. In his view, as long as there was a new emperor, no one dared to oppose him in the world. Unexpectedly, it attracted the attacks of various feudal lords. Although the Western Liang army was elite, the feudal lords were also strong and used the power of Liangzhou to fight against the world. Dongzhuo did not have the confidence to do so. When now the 18-root Marquis alliance is falsely claiming 500,000 yuan and killing Luoyang to ensure the stability of the general's strategy. Don't panic, the feudal lords of the 18-root pretended to be 500,000, but at most only over 200,000 people. Coupled with the varying thoughts of the lords, they will definitely not use force to attack the pass. Although our army has few soldiers, the city is strong, and there is sufficient food and grass. We only need to send one general to guard the Sisui Pass, and when the lords run out of food and grass, they will naturally retreat. Luoyang has no worries, said Li Rodeo. Okay, order Huaxiong to immediately mobilize 50,000 troops and horses to go to Sisui Pass. Just guarding the pass is a great achievement. Dongzhuo was overjoyed upon hearing this. Liu Bu led Chao Xingishun to the great tents of the feudal lords. As a person in the future world, he really wanted to see what these prominent figures like Cao Cao, Yuan Shao, and Liu Bei looked like. I believe this is General Liu Bulu, who is loyal to his country, right? Liu Bu looked at the general, who was almost 2 heads shorter than himself and wore military uniform with bright and lively eyes, in question. I am the one, dare you ask the general? I am Cao Cao, with the courtesy name Mengde. I've heard a lot about your reputation. Brother Mengde assassinated the old thief Dong Zhuo alone, which is well known all over the world. Seeing him today is truly remarkable. If you don't mind, Mengde can call me Feng Xian. LV Bu complimented. Okay, then I won't be disrespectful. Feng Xian, the current Tiger General, really makes Dong Zhuo the old thief's food and accommodation tasteless. Chow Chow laughed. Mengde's brother is absurd, please come inside. Faced with the prominent figures, LV Bu lowered his posture very low. Although his military strength was high, his subordinates lacked talents who could handle it independently. After a prestigious family like Chow Chow, in times of chaos, there would inevitably be many famous scholars who followed them. This is also his own disadvantage, and not to be in conflict with them is the basic principle. I originally thought that LV Bu was just a brave Chow Chow, but I couldn't help but admire him. LV Bu's performance also gave Chow Chow some favor. People from noble families generally look down on such martial artists, and Chow Chow is one of them. After entering the big tent, he enthusiastically introduced everyone to LV Bu. The new book Rebirth of Zhao Yun. Battle for the World has been released, and we hope everyone can support us. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Meeting with Marquises. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 7 Meeting with Marquises. You all came to suppress the old bandit Dong Zhuo, revitalize the Han dynasty, and unite the feudal lords. We need unified orders. Yuan Shao, who had just entered the tent and knelt in the front row, got to the point. Just as it is, the lords and horses are diverse, and it is necessary to have a leader to command them, agreed Wang Quang, the prefect of Hanoi. Yuan Shao glanced at the feudal lords in the tent, his gaze fixed on LV Bu, and slowly said, Shao thought that General LV led his army to resist the Dong bandits, and there was no one who could resist their bravery. He should be the leader of the alliance and lead his troops to fight against the old bandits. Humph, what can Lu Bu do? He's just a brave person, Yuan Shu sneered disdainfully. Lu Bu glanced at Yuan Shu and arched his hand, saying, Bu has little talent and knowledge, and is not enough to take on important responsibilities. The Yuan family has 4 generations and 3 dukes, and they have all over the world. I believe that only by becoming the leader of the alliance in the beginning can we subdue the masses. Yuan Shu's expression was not very attractive. He was the legitimate son and the candidate for the next head of the family, while Yuan Shao was only an illegitimate descendant but was recommended by LV Bu. That's right, I should have been the leader of the feudal alliance in the beginning, Chow Chow echoed, and what LV Bu said was exactly what he had in mind. Thank you for your respect. I have no merit in my lower body, how dare I sit as the leader of the alliance? Yuan Shao averted his gaze from LV Bu and then declined. Under the repeated recommendation of everyone, Yuan Shao took the position of the leader of the alliance, and he also remembered the performance of various feudal lords. He also saw the kindness of LV Bu. Since you have elected me as the leader of the alliance, you must obey the dispatch and join in the campaign against the old thief Dong Zhuo. Do not judge by strength or weakness. Merit in battle will be rewarded, and mistakes will be punished. After swearing in blood as the leader of the alliance, Yuan Shaotuan sat at the top and said coldly. Seeing no one opposing, Yuan Shao continued, General Yuan Shu, the Governor-General, will ensure that there is no shortage of food and supplies for all troops and horses. No. Yuan Shu was overjoyed. Although he did not become the leader of the alliance, the governor's provisions were a good job, with plenty of oil and water. He could easily manipulate anyone who looked down on him. For the first time, Yuan Shu, who had always looked down on Yuan Shao, thought he was so cute. I don't know who is willing to be a pioneer. Yuan Shao looked around at everyone. I am willing to be in the front, Sun Jian said. Wen Tai is brave and can shoulder this important task. Yuan Shao nodded and said, "The other feudal lords are preparing their troops and horses to go to Sisui Pass. May I ask if this is General Lv Bulu, who is famous throughout the world? I am the prefect of Beiping, Gongsun Zan. I've looked up and admired for a long time, it turns out to be the governor of Gongsun." Lu Bu quickly clasped his fists and replied, not expecting to become a famous general in the world. No wonder Yuan Shao's gaze towards him was somewhat unfriendly when electing the leader of the alliance. "General Lv, the military situation is urgent. Goodbye, we will have a banquet for the general tomorrow." "Don't be in a hurry," are the three brothers Lu Guan and Zhang behind Governor Gongsun. Lu Bu smelled a hint of danger on the two people behind Gongsun Zan and asked in a voice. "Oh, General Lv recognizes them?" Gong Suanzan said curiously. Like thunder piercing through the ears, Lu Guan and Zhang Taoyuan formed an alliance, suppressed the Yellow Turban, and made remarkable military achievements. "No one knows," sighed Lu Bu. "General Lv still has good eyesight, unlike some people who have a dog's eye that looks down on others," Zhang Fei laughed heartily. Zhang Fei's voice was already loud, which made Yuan Shu, who had just left the camp, face black. He let out a cold snort and left. Upon seeing this, Gongsun Zan's face turned a bit bitter. With this incident, Yuan Shu would definitely put the blame on him. I believe this is Brother Ida. It's indeed a matter of pleasure and enmity. We'll just get drunk and rest the next day," Lu Bu laughed. "I can't help but beg for it. I heard that General Lv has unparalleled martial arts skills, and I still need to ask for some advice." Zhang Feiyue looked at it more and more, and found Lv Bu pleasing, little realizing that he was the first person in history to curse Lv Bu as a servant with 3 surnames. Ida should not be reckless. Liu Bei approached and clasped his fists, saying, "I hope General Lv can forgive me if I have offended you." It's okay. There aren't so many rules between martial artists," Lu Bu waved his hand and said. There must be a lot to gain from fighting a fierce general like Zhang Fei, and he couldn't help but beg for it. After bidding farewell to several people, Lv Bu quickly caught up with Sun Jian and said, "Brother Wentai, please walk slowly." "Oh, I wonder if General Lv has any insights?" Sun Jian asked in doubt. General Sun's attack on Sisui Pass this time must ensure sufficient food and grass, and there may be people who are unwilling to take credit for it, Lv Bu reminded. Of course, as the saying goes, the 3 armies do not move their supplies first. As the vanguard of the army, who will take credit for it? General Lv was worried too much. Sun Jian's tone was somewhat displeased. General Sunday. Lv Bu hesitated to speak, although history is portrayed in this way. If it weren't for that plot, wouldn't it have offended Sun Jian and Yuan Shu in vain? General Lv, I have something important to attend to. We will discuss it again tomorrow. Sigh. Lu Bu sighed, thinking to himself when he had become so sad in spring and autumn. Everyone has their own destiny. With so many people in the late Eastern Han dynasty, could he still expect to remind them one by one? Let's do our own thing first, let alone our adoptive father Ding Yuan who couldn't change his fate. General, that Yuan Shu is really not something. Our Bingzhou army has fought countless battles with Dongzhuo's old thief, and he actually insulted General like this. If General Gao hadn't stopped him, I would have taken action long ago. After returning to the camp, Chao Xing cursed loudly. Even Gao Shan, who had always been silent, his face turned pale with iron. All right, these are all small things. After going back, I will instruct all the troops to keep their weapons and horses on, especially at night, and strengthen patrols to prevent any changes. Lv Bu did not take Yuan Shu, a useless thing, seriously. He wanted to be looked up to by others, relying on his strength. No, Chao Xinggao said with a fist in his hand. Send out scouts to observe the movements of Sun Jian's army and report any situation in a timely manner. Lv Bu still felt a bit uneasy. His own power can be said to be relatively weak among the feudal lords, and his foresight can take the opportunity to make friends with various feudal lords, laying a foundation for future stability. In terms of scouts, the Bingzhou army did a good job. Within a radius of 30 miles, any wind or grass could be quickly transmitted to Chao Xing's hands, which is probably something that various feudal lords can do. A qualified scout needs to be observant and attentive, as well as possess exceptional equestrian and martial arts skills. Under the Sisui Pass, Sun Jian looked at the majestic pass in the distance, but in his surprise, he developed a belief that he was determined to break through this pass. "General, let's report that Bao Zhong, the younger brother of Bao Xian, the Prime Minister of Jibei, attacked Sisui Pass before our army and was killed by the defending General Hua Xiong inside the pass. Bao Xian misunderstood our alliance." Sun Jian sighed and suddenly remembered what Liu Bu had said before his departure about someone snatching credit for. He was surprised and wondered if there might have been a problem with food and supplies. "De Mao, you should immediately count the grain and forage." "No," Cheng Pu clenched his fists. The next day, Sun Jian ordered his troops and horses to tie their feet outside the range of Sisui Pass. With a horizontal strike of his ancient ingot sword, he cursed loudly, "Help the bandits, why don't you surrender early? Otherwise, if we break through the pass, we will definitely make you wait for your head to leave." The new book, Rebirth of Zhao Yun. Battle for the World, has been released, and we hope everyone can support us. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Rushing to Aid Sun Jian. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Rushing to aid Sun Jian. Hua Xiong's long sword swung horizontally in his hand and sneered disdainfully, "What kind of feudal alliance is just a local chicken, tile dog? Who would want to go out of the pass and kill this person?" "I am willing to go to my humble position," said General Hu Zhen. "Okay, General Hu is a fierce general of our army. If you kill this colleague, I will pay tribute to you in front of the Prime Minister," Hua Xiong laughed. "Thank you very much, General." Hu Zhen excitedly picked up the long sword handed by the soldier and turned over to mount his horse. Seeing Hu Zhen face the battle, Cheng Pu didn't answer either. The flying horse raised its spear and directly took Hu Zhen. Fang's hand was only a 3-in-1, and Hu Zhen was constantly complaining. The opponent's strength was too strong for him, so he could only stubbornly support him. Cheng Pu saw that he couldn't take down Hu Zhen in a hurry and sold a loophole. Hu Zhen's face showed joy, and a long sword hit Cheng Pu's chest. Cheng Pu dodged and shouted, stabbing Hu Zhen in the throat with a spear. Hua Xiong was slightly surprised when he saw Cheng Pu's bravery. Hu Zhen's strength was not weak in the Western Liang army. Sun Jian saw Cheng Pu slaying Hu Zhen, and with a wave of the ancient ingot sword, the army advanced to the front of the pass. The 2,000 soldiers and horses who followed Hu Zhen to battle quickly fled towards the pass. After a brief charge, Sun Jian saw that the door was tightly closed, arrows rained down on the city, and the siege equipment had not arrived. He led his troops back to Liangdongtan to station, and as soon as the siege equipment arrived, he attacked Sisui Pass. Winning the first battle, Sun Jian was very happy. The Qing Emperor executed the rebellion on his side, but it was an unparalleled achievement. If he broke through the Sisui Pass, this vanguard general would be famous throughout the world. "Lord, the food and forage in the camp is only enough for today's needs, and the food and forage have not been transported yet." After counting the food and forage, Cheng Puqing quickly asked to see Sun Jian. "Immediately order someone to go to the Yuan Highway to inspect, and there should be no mistake in the matter of food and forage." Just as he had won a victory, Sun Jian couldn't be happy, as food and forage were the foundation of the army. "No," Cheng Pu hurriedly left under orders. Moreover, since Liu Bu had nothing to do in the camp, he walked around the camp of the feudal lords and had a reputation for fighting against the rebel Dongzhuo. It was also easy to establish close relationships with the feudal lords, and it was a pleasure to be brothers and sisters with famous generals in history. However, he found that among the feudal lords, except for Gong Sun Zan, Ma Teng, and Cao Cao who had a great conversation with him, the attitudes of the other lords were somewhat cold and somewhat repulsive. "General, let's report that Sun Jian's army has run out of food and supplies. For some reason, Yuan Shu has been unwilling to distribute food. It is said that the people sent by Sun Jian to urge food have also been detained by him." Chao Xing whispered. "Humph, a short-sighted villain." Lu Bu looked down on Yuan Shu quite a bit. Relying on his family background, he acted recklessly in the coalition army, and sooner or later he would suffer the consequences. "Chao Xing, immediately gather 2,000 cavalry and follow my general to rescue General Sunday." Lv Bu pondered for a moment and ordered. "No," Chao Xing clenched his fists and said. "General, Sun Jian has nothing to do with our army, and when I reminded him recently, he still annoyed me. Why did I go to rescue him?" Gao Shun was very surprised that Lu Bu could know in advance that Sun Jian was short of food. Sun Wentai is a tiger general, and as the main force in the fight against Dong, how could he sit and watch our allies suffer? Moreover, our army has a relatively small number in the coalition and makes friends with other feudal lords, which is also to prevent the Yuan brothers from making things difficult for us, especially the Yuan Highway, which is petty and has to be guarded against." After listening to Lu Bu's explanation, Gao Shun clenched his fists and said, "General, I have great insight. When will you learn to flatter too?" Lu Bu smiled. "I speak from the bottom of my heart." The general was able to learn in advance about Sun Jian's shortage of food, which shows that he knows Yuan Shu very well. "General Gao, General Chao and I led our cavalry to the Sisui Pass to rescue General Sunday. You are temporarily in charge of the entire army's affairs. If there is any situation, you will handle it yourself." "No," Gao Shunlang said in a loud voice. Since Lu Bu was injured while riding a horse, he realized that Lu Bu had changed a lot. He cared about his soldiers and learned to consider others. He attributed all of this to the death of Governor Ding. Moreover, the news of Sun Jian's shortage of food was learned by Hua Xiong in Sisui Pass. Under the planning of Li Su, Hua Xiong's troops split into two routes that night and left the pass to kill Sun Jian's camp. Sun Jian, who was worried about the matter of food and supplies, did not anticipate that Hua Xiong would attack the camp. In addition, after several battles, the soldiers did not have sufficient food and supplies, and their morale was unstable. For a time, the army was in chaos, with people and horses trampling on them, resulting in countless deaths and injuries. "Yuan Shu's child misunderstood me," Sun Jian cursed loudly. "General, Hua Xiong is about to be killed, hurry up." Cheng Pu organized his troops to resist the enemy, and was about to be broken through by the Western Liang army in front of him. "General, hurry up." Zhu Mao led a team of people and horses to kill him, and said urgently. "Gongfu, you go first." Sun Jian, whose eyes were tearful as he watched his subordinates form a chaotic formation, unaware of their generals. He didn't expect the army to be defeated without food and supplies, which made him explain how to deal with the soldiers. "General, only by leaving a useful body can we seek revenge for ourselves." Cheng Pu's face was covered in blood. "Let's go." Sun Jian gritted his teeth and chose to retreat in front of major issues. Hua Xiong followed Li Su's advice and set fires everywhere in the camp. Coupled with the impact of the cavalry from the Western Liang army, Sun Jian's army quickly suffered a defeat. "Sun Jian, where can we escape?" Hua Xiong shouted from a distance as he saw Zhu Mao leading a team of people to protect Sun Jian from breaking out. Sun Jian waved his ancient ingot knife in his hand and angrily cursed, "Shameless child, I will take your life." The two swords intersected, and Hua Xiong was surprised to find that Sun Jian had such martial arts skills. He restrained his mind and fought alongside Sun Jian. After several rounds, Sun Jian saw more and more enemy troops rushing towards him. He made a faint move and rode away, but Hua Xiong naturally refused to let go of Sun Jian. He led his cavalry to chase after him closely, and the Liangzhou cavalry were all elite, passing by like a bamboo, with fewer and fewer soldiers beside Sun Jian. Hua Xiong's one-handed sword technique made him appear and disappear, getting closer and closer to Sun Jian. Suddenly, he shouted loudly, "Sun Jian, where are you going to escape? Hurry up and get off your horse and surrender. I will give you a good word in front of the Prime Minister and spare you from death." "No way," Sun Jian snorted coldly. Faced with more and more enemy troops, each rise and fall of the long sword would surely take away one life, and the power of the cavalry's charge shook his heart. "Protect the general." Zhu Mao shouted loudly and turned to kill Hua Xiong. "Derong." Sun Jian, whose eyes were filled with tears. "Master, hurry up," Zhu Mao said urgently. Despite repeated thrusts, Zhu Mao's strength was somewhat lacking and he was about to be beheaded by Hua Xiong on horseback. The number of soldiers under his command was decreasing, and Sun Jian realized that there was no hope of breaking through. He looked up and cursed, "Yuan Gao Dao, I am not compatible with you." Hua Xiong was overjoyed to see Sun Jian give up resistance. As long as he killed the vanguard general of the feudal alliance, it would definitely be a great achievement, and his position in the Western Liang army would be even higher. The Zhu Mao in front of him made Hua Xiong furious. Although his martial arts were not as good as his, he used a desperate move, disregarding his injuries. If he were to be killed, he would definitely suffer considerable damage, which Hua Xiong could not tolerate. Sun Jian led his soldiers to turn around and kill the Western Liang army. The soldiers under his command, seeing the brave general, all turned to death and immediately suppressed the invincible Western Liang army. The new book requires everyone's support, and having more recommended tickets is beneficial. Remember to collect the book if you like it. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Kicking Yuan Shu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Kicking Yuan Shu, Kill. Those who capture Sun Jian alive will be rewarded with 100 gold coins and granted the title of general. Hua Xiong shouted loudly. Under the heavy reward, there must be brave men, and more Western young soldiers are starting to work hard. This is an opportunity to climb to the sky step by step. The situation on the battlefield has once again become stalemate, with Sun Jianyong being fierce and the Xiliang army being elite, making it difficult to distinguish for a while. "Follow me, General." Lu Bu, who had just arrived, saw that Sun Jian was in danger and led his cavalry to attack Hua Xiong. He shouted loudly, "Hua Xiong, take your life." Lu Bu. Hua Xiong's eyes tightened, and he swung open Zhu Mao's sword with a strike. He fell off his horse and fled towards the army. If asked who he was most afraid of in the coalition army, there was no better than Lu Bu in front of him. This person was the master who had been able to fight the three generals of the Western Liang army with ease. Originally a general of the Western Liang army, Hua Xiong was dissatisfied with Lu Bu's martial arts skills. Instead of fighting alone, the result was disastrous. He didn't use 3 moves and almost died under Lu Bu's halberd. He deeply understood that their martial arts were not at the same level, so every time they faced Lu Bu, he had no intention of fighting. Kill. Seeing Hua Xiong timid, Lu Bu waved the halberd drawn by Fang Tian in his hand, and behind him 2,000 cavalry rushed towards Hua Xiong's army like fierce tigers descending from the mountain. The cavalry of Bingzhou were all elite, and with the advantage of their stirrups, the Xiliang cavalry were killed and retreated step by step. Hua Xiong saw that his cavalry had suffered a great loss in the hands of Lu Bu, so he had no choice but to retreat. The casualties of the cavalry were intolerable, and even Dongzhou did not have a large number of cavalry. Thank you very much for General Lv's life-saving kindness. Previously, I bestowed upon you the blessings of a gentleman with the heart of a villain. I hope General Lv will not blame me. Sun Jian, covered in bloodstains, clenched his fists on his horse. General Sun, we are both allied forces and should join hands to retreat the enemy. Lu Bu shouted to the cavalry behind him, follow me to kill the enemy. Watching two cavalry fighting together, Sun Jian had an impulse to form cavalry. If it weren't for the charge of Liangzhou cavalry in the previous attack on the camp, his army wouldn't have been defeated so quickly. The cavalry from both sides were entangled, and Sun Jian quickly gathered his troops and horses. After a brief charge, Cao Xing gathered his troops and immediately said, our army has lost more than 130 people, injured more than 400 people, and the enemy has lost at least 300 people. Lu Bu felt a pain in his heart. Find the bodies of his brothers, bury them properly, and register the deceased. No, Cao Xing clenched his fists and said, satisfied with the achievements of the Bingzhou army. Dongzhuo's elite iron cavalry was world-renowned, and it was unimaginable for his own cavalry to kill more than twice as many enemies in the past. General LV's subordinates are indeed elite troops, and Liangzhou's iron cavalry is not as good as theirs. Sun Jian's words were full of envy. General Sun was tricked by villains to lead to a major defeat, otherwise Huaxiong wouldn't have been so easy to win, Lu Bu laughed. After Yuan Shu became a famous family, he was facing a great enemy and even seized food and supplies, leading to our army's great defeat. This time, he will definitely demand an explanation. Sun Jian gritted his teeth and said. General Sun, did you offend Yuan Shu before? LV Bai asked. Impossible, Sun Jian said decisively. Oh, that's a bit strange. Sun Jian was shocked and thought of a possibility. Although he had no grudge against Yuan Shu, he was adjacent to Yuan Shu's rule. Perhaps he wanted to weaken his own strength through Dongzhuo's hand. Upon seeing the situation reverse, Huaxiong quickly gathered his troops and retreated to the pass. He wrote a letter to Dongzhuo, detailing how to break through Sun Jian's army and the details of Lu Bu's rescue efforts. LV Bu's reminder made Sun Jian's mind grow. It seems that his previous behavior was a bit excessive, causing some people's suspicion. Sun Jian's face turned pale as he walked side by side with LV Bu into the allied tent. Before Yuan Shao, who was in charge, could speak out to appease him, he pointed at Yuan Shu and cursed, Yuan Gaodao, more than half of my 20,000 troops died or were injured because of you. Why don't we distribute food and grass? If we can't give an explanation to my general today, Wen Tai, calm down, calm down. Last night when I heard that Wen Tai was defeated by Huaxiong, why don't we go back to camp and rest first? Yuan Shao comforted. If it weren't for Yuan Shu's failure to distribute food and forage, how could our army have suffered such a defeat? Sun Jian was furious. Sun Wen Tai, you lost the battle and now you're relying on me. Yuan Shu stood up and snorted coldly. General Yuan, General Sun's army is short of provisions, and the grain collectors have come several times. Why don't they distribute provisions? Lu Bu sneered as he stared at Yuan Shu. Pifu, is it your fault to interrupt here? Sun Jian, known as a fierce tiger, broke through his yellow scarf and gained a great reputation. He was skilled in martial arts, and Yuan Shu was afraid of Sun Jian, but it didn't mean he was afraid of Lu Bu and would curse when he opened his mouth. Yuan Shu's child, why don't you attack Dongzhuo with such eloquence? Lu Bu's eyes tightened, and his anger surged. At least his body was also a peerless warrior, which made Yuan Shu look down on him. He was also a scumbag who cheated on food and grass. Chao Xingishun stood on both sides of Lu Bu, glaring angrily at Yuan Shu. Watching Lu Bu raging with blood on his clothes still wet, Yuan Shu licked his lips and, although somewhat afraid, still insisted, what are you? General, Governor General's provisions, where is there any place for you to speak? I led my troops and horses to kill the enemy in front of me. It's reasonable for you to seize the grain and forage. If I don't teach you a lesson, you wouldn't know that Lord Ma has 3 eyes. Lu Bu was angry and stepped forward to kick Yuan Shu, who had retreated 5 or 6 steps to the ground. If Sun Jian hadn't seen the opportunity quickly and pulled him, he might have become the first feudal lord to be kicked to death. Pup, Yuan Shu was furious and burst into a mouthful of blood. Lubu Pifu, if you dare to harm me, someone will pull me out and kill me. Behind Yuan Shu, Yishi drew his sword and stabbed Lvbu. Chao Xing coldly snorted and drew his sword towards him. Gao Shun took a step forward and stood in front of Lvbu. The atmosphere inside the tent suddenly became tense. The feudal lords in the tent were somewhat dumbfounded. They were also people of high positions, how could they act so rudely? There were those who despised them, and those who appreciated them. Well done, if I were Lao Zhang, I would just kill him. Zhang Fei felt very satisfied, and Yuan Shu, who was high and mighty, was also beaten one day. Don't say too much, Liu Bei glared at Zhang Fei and whispered. General LV, General Yuan, stop quickly. The other lords saw this and quickly came forward to persuade, no matter what, Yuan Shu was the legitimate son of the Yuan family. Pifu. Yuan Shu felt a loss of face and kept cursing. General, I'll make you understand what Pifu means. Lu Bu raised his fist. Looking at Lvbu's figure, everyone had no doubt that this punch would kill Yuan Shu. Yuan Shao snorted coldly and said, stop pulling and tugging. What kind of situation is it? Highway, why don't you give food to Wen Tai? His liking for Lvbu also plummeted, and no matter what, he fell behind when he started. This matter was caused by a small official under my account, who claimed that there were soldiers and horses of Dongzhuo's old thief along the way, so they were late in providing food and forage. After our general found out, this person was talking nonsense and I ordered him to be executed. Yuan Shu, realizing his wrongdoing, whispered. If you like this book, put in a recommendation vote. New books require support, and if you pass by, remember to collect them. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Huaxiong runs again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Huaxiong runs again. The petty officials are causing trouble. I think there's more to it than that, right? Would General Yuan listen to the words of his subordinates? Lvbu leaned forward and said. General LV, don't say much, let me explain it in detail. Yuan Shao was very unhappy with Lvbu's behavior. Nowadays, everyone wants to be a cultured person, who would like a martial artist. Sun Jian gave Lvbu a grateful look and said, please give me an explanation from the leader. Yuan Shu is truly knowledgeable, and if his ability to tell stories is second, no one dares to call him first. With these words, he actually became a wise general, as if it was wrong for Sun Jian to blame him for his defeat. The other feudal lords whispered in the tent, obviously impressed by Yuan Shu's ability to weave stories. Yuan Road had a history of managing grain and forage, and ordered him to immediately distribute grain to General Sunday. General Sun was rewarded with 50 good horses and 100 taels of gold for his meritorious service in the first battle. Seeing that most of the other feudal lords had their hearts set on Yuan Shao and his two companions, Sun Jian could only accept orders. Leader, General LV's leadership in rescuing General Sun and repelling Huaxiong is a great achievement, said Gongsun Zan. Without permission, I sent troops without permission, thinking that I had made contributions, and that my merits and demerits were equal, and I didn't give any rewards. Yuan Shao snorted coldly, saying that he and Yuan Shu were also brothers, and that he had lost face in front of outsiders, which naturally made him very uncomfortable. Leader, Cao Cao's expression changed slightly and he approached. General Sun is trapped in a tight encirclement. Although General LV sent troops without authorization to rescue him, he did not cause our army to suffer any damage to the general. We have to reward him. Yuan Shao looked at Cao Cao with displeasure and pondered for a long time, saying, let's take note of the credit for now. We will make a decision after we defeat the Dong thief the next day. Lubu gently tugged at Sun Jian, who was about to come forward to argue, and shook his head slightly. He had no intention of asking for any rewards, and it was evident from this that among the lords, there was not a superficial harmony. When it came to interests, it was feared that each one would tear apart their disguise. Reportedly, Huaxiong led his iron cavalry down the pass and cursed the Zhuan in front of the village. Bao Zhong's younger brother disobeyed military orders and was beheaded by Huaxiong. Now that General Sun has been defeated by the enemy, who dares to go to war? Yuan Shao sighed. As soon as Yuan Shu finished speaking, Yushi glared fiercely at Lu Bu behind him and clenched her fists, saying, "I am willing to go, I will definitely take the head of Huaxiong." Upon hearing this, Yuan Shao was overjoyed and hastily ordered Yushi to go to war in Huaxiong, reducing his dissatisfaction with Yuan Shu. Lu Bu paid no attention to Yushi's angry gaze and sighed, "Those who make soy sauce are always those who make soy sauce." What does Feng Xian mean by this statement? What is making soy sauce? Sun Jian asked suspiciously, and beside him, Gong Xuanzan and Chao Chao cast curious glances. "Oh, this is my hometown dialect, which means it's not useful." As expected, if Yushi doesn't come out of the 5 harmonies, he will definitely be beheaded. LV Bu still has a certain impression of the first one among the feudal lords to use the dragon's trick. Lu Bu, don't talk nonsense. Yushi is the general under my command. Yuan Shu was kicked just now, feeling very unhappy in his heart. Reportedly, General Yushi engaged in a fierce battle with Huaxiong and was beheaded by Huaxiong on horseback. Everyone was shocked and they heard this, and Yuan Shu angrily covered his chest and pointed at LV Bu's lips, trembling. In his opinion, it was because of LV Bu's curse that he had planned to take a breath in front of the feudal lords, but who knew he had defeated his subordinate general? Who dares to go to war? Yuan Shao looked around at everyone and asked with a pale face. Han Fu, the governor of Jizhou, stepped forward and said, "I have General Pan Feng who can slay Huaxiong." Yuan Shao quickly ordered Pan Feng to go to war. "It's a pity that we have a general," Lu Bu sighed lightly. General LV believes that Pan Feng is not a match for Huaxiong. Sun Jian asked in a low voice. "Let's wait and see the result." LV Bu quickly closed his mouth. Speaking discouraging words at this moment would offend people. Yuan Shu let it go. Han Fu is after all the governor of Jizhou, and Jizhou is adjacent to Bingzhou. Don't give yourself shoes any time. Report, Pan Feng was beheaded by Huaxiong. Upon hearing this, the feudal lords were greatly surprised and did not expect Huaxiong to possess such skills. Yuan Shao sighed and said, "It's a pity that my general Yan Liang has not yet achieved the level of literary ugliness. Otherwise, it would be too much to be afraid of only Huaxiong." Sun Jian is in a state of anger, and it is impossible to send his subordinates to battle, while LV Bu will not be the leader. Guan Yu, who had been watching coldly, let out a cold snort and stood out, "I am willing to go and behead Huaxiong's head, and offer it to my tent." Everyone looked at him and saw that his body was 9 feet long, his beard was 2 feet long, his phoenix eyes were red, his silkworms were lying on his eyebrows, his face was like a heavy jujube, his voice was like a bell, and he was truly a hero. Who is this person? Yuan Shao quickly asked when he saw Guan Yu's extraordinary appearance and the power of a great general. "This is Guan Yuye, the younger brother of Lu Xuande," explained Gongsun Zan. "What is your current position?" Yuan Shao asked. "Follow Lu Xuande as a horse archer," Gong Xuanzan said truthfully. "Do you bully my lords without a general? Even a small horse archer dares to speak wildly here, come here, fight with a stick." Yuan Shu felt a surge of anger in his chest, and was bullied by LV Bu. The general under his command was broken, and there was even a horse archer jumping out, which was unbelievable. Humph, this person has already humiliated Big Brother before, and now he's humiliating Second Brother, my old Zhang. Zhang Fei was furious. When LV Bu didn't come back before, Yuan Shao asked Liu Bei and the 3 of them, and Yuan Shu was cold talking on the side. Let's take a look before we talk, Liu Bei whispered. The leader of the alliance is calm. Guan Yunchang is an enemy of 10,000 people, and killing Hua Xiong must be easy to capture. If a hero doesn't ask for his source, who can know if he is a horse archer? LV Bu quickly approached. Cao Cao suddenly felt like he had eaten a fly. However, LV Bu repeated what he wanted to say. Others did not know Guan Yu's strength, but he had some understanding. Guan Yu cast a grateful gaze and said to Yuan Shao, "If you can't win, please behead someone." The resolute voice reassured the lords in the tent, and Hua Xiong won 2 consecutive games without any skills. How could he invite a battle? Cao Cao quickly brought a cup of hot wine and handed it to Guan Yu. "Yun Chang, please fill this cup first. Let's put down the wine, I'll go and come." With that, he went out of the tent and picked up his knife, then flew up and mounted his horse. LV Bu hurriedly walked out of the camp, flipped over and mounted his horse. He also wanted to see the heroic performance of Guan Yu's warm wine slaying Hua Xiong. The sound of drums shook the sky, and Hua Xiong lifted his long sword with a majestic aura. If it weren't for Li Su's suggestion to go out of the pass and defeat the morale of the coalition army, he would never have gone to war. LV Bu was in the coalition army, and if he angered him, it would have been disastrous. He was already prepared, and as soon as LV Bu appeared, he would have turned around and left, never giving him any chance. Hua Xiong, who was showing off his strength, tightened his gaze. A powerful general rushed out of the village gate, definitely a formidable enemy. He restrained his mind and was preparing to face the battle when Lu Bu, holding the Fang Tian Hua halberd, rushed out of the village gate with his horse. Seeing this, Hua Xiong swung his sword and pulled his horse away. Guan Yu stared blankly at Hua Xiong, who had fled in despair. This was the reason why Hua Xiong, who had killed 2 generals of the coalition army, ran away as soon as he fought. He had encountered such a situation for the first time since he went to war. End of this chapter.